Well, I'm from Scotland. I've lived there all my life. I grew up in a small village in the mountains. My mother and father had a small hotel there. So I had a very happy childhood. There were 5 of us in the family. We were brought up as a devout Catholic family from the earliest age, in an area where there are very few Catholics. So we were the unusual family in the village who were Catholic. You know, our lives really changed as a family when I was 15 years of age. My sister read a newspaper article about reports of the Virgin Mary appearing in Yugoslavia, as it was then, in Medjugorje. And we persuaded our parents to let us go there on a pilgrimage. It was really an adventure. We wanted to go to this communist country on the other side of Europe and to discover if this could possibly be true. This was 1983, and our experience there really changed our lives, really renewed our Catholic faith. When we came home, our parents could see something had changed in us, so they went. They had a similar experience, and they changed our home, the small hotel, into a Catholic retreat centre. They just began inviting people to come to spend time in prayer. And that work's gone on to this day. That still happens in that place, my old family home.
They came back different people. They came back really imbued, which we recognize now as that wonderful spirit of prayer that emanates from Medjugorje. And we were actually bowled over by our children actually telling us, you know, Mum and Dad, you ought to be praying more. And we say, yes, yes, yes. And then they said, yes, and you ought to be fasting. We said, come and give it a break, you know. But it was really incredible. And it really impinged on us that this conversion was so profound and so strong in such a short time.
So we went out a couple of months later as a small group. None of us really saw any incredible phenomena of any kind, but it was the grace of knowing that our Blessed Mother was with us, and the grace of knowing that our whole life in some very subtle way was going to change. We knew from that very first visit that there was going to be a fundamental change in our life, and all that we had to do was to trust our Blessed Mother and to do God's will on a day-to-day basis, and it would unfold for us what exactly she had planned.
A little later, so when the war broke out in the former Yugoslavia, we were very moved because we'd been to that part of the world, because we'd been to Medjugorje. We felt especially moved to see the people suffering there so much. And so we just decided to do one small thing to help. By then I was working on a fish farm, a salmon farmer. So my brother and I had this plan to just try and do one small thing to help. So we took 1 week's holiday from work. We asked people if they would give us food and clothing, and we drove those things and gave them in a refugee camp in Bosnia. And I came home thinking I'd done my good deed, and then I discovered that God had a completely different plan, because all these things continued to arrive at our home, all these food and clothing. So I prayed about it, and I decided to give up my job, and I sold my house, and somebody gave me a truck. And I just said to God, I'll keep doing this as long as people keep giving and as long as there's a need. And maybe I thought that would be for a few months, and here I am 30 years later. It never stopped. I never had any idea to start a new charitable organization. You know, I'm not qualified to do this at all. I never lose this sense of surprise that God gave me this opportunity. And yes, you know, our Blessed Mother, she's present always, all the way through this. This is hers. That year we were working in Malawi in southern Africa. It was during a famine. We were feeding many people in the villages there who were starving. And I met this family, the local parish priest took me with him to visit them. And the father of the family had just died, and the mother, who was called Emma, was now dying. And she had her 6 children with her. And she said to me, you know, there's nothing left now except for me to pray that somebody will look after my children. And then I began talking to her oldest child. He was called Edward. And I asked Edward, what's your hopes, what's your dreams? And he said to me, I'd like to have enough food to eat, and I would like to be able to go to school one day. And that was all of his dream at 14 years of age. And in many ways, it was his words that sparked this mission, this simple thing we do of providing one meal every day in a place of education. You know, it has the hallmarks of our Blessed Mother. You know, this simple, practical, motherly work of love to make sure the child eats every day, to make sure the child has an opportunity to grow, to be the person that God made them to be.
It was dangerous because there's a lot of hunger. In that place, everything that someone can become is a gangster. So I had a great chance to be a gangster too. But fortunately, I found Mary's meals, and I found education, I found food. So I am now started to have a new dream and realize that I can become something good than becoming something bad. So in that place, people would make pancake out of mud and sugar and butter. I didn't have that chance to eat that mud because I found Mary's meals. And Mary's meals feeds me for almost 12 years and make big change in my life.
This hunger in the world is not something we should just accept as a fact. It's something that we can change. You know, the fact that this work of ours has grown to be feeding 2 million children every day now, it shows that this is possible, and we feel, we hope that this work we're doing is also encouraging other people to think this is possible. Things can get better.
You know, I think what Magnus has achieved here is he's not walked an easy path. You know, it's involved a lot of surrendering a huge amount of faith, which is really how he operates. And he's just relied on so much hard work and determination, but then leaving the rest up to faith. And through that faith, you see what is opened up in front of him, which I think when you come here, you realize it's quite hard to fathom that you know, just how quickly this has grown and to what extent.
Maybe this is all the works of Blessed Mary. She invite you here like teenagers, that she learned you what is important in the life, that she put in your heart these things. And after with prayer you understand that you want Mary's meal.
You must have seen so many amazing things happen here.
Yes,
all
every
these
day.
years.
Every day. People telling me things what they never think that they can be.
Yes.
And they happening here in Medjugorje. Because she walking here.
When I think about Mary's meals, I just think about it like lots and lots of little acts of love. You know, thousands of people all over the world doing small acts of love. You know, and that's why this mission grows. That's why it moves forward. You know, because so for example, all the meals every day are cooked and served by unpaid volunteers in their own community, people who are themselves struggling with poverty and yet who are choosing to give this gift of their time so that the children in their community might eat. You know, our fundraising work all over the world relies on volunteers, people doing this freely as an act of love. So that's why this is possible, you know, and it grows in extraordinary ways, in ways I don't really understand. I can't really explain it, but I see in Mary's meals another beautiful sign of God's providence, that He's moving so many people. And I think our Blessed Mother, in a very particular way, is moving people all over the world. Yeah, every day I have this sense of kind of wonder at this thing that keeps happening. And sometimes I'm almost embarrassed because I'm called the founder of this work or the CEO of this work, and really honestly, I don't pretend to understand this miracle completely. So I would just like to ask everyone who's watching this just to think about what you can do, not only for Mary's meals. We can all do something to make this world better, but especially for Mary's meals, I would ask you to to pray for this work. In the story of Mary's Meals, prayer came first. We describe this as a fruit of prayer. And I would just ask you to pray for all those hungry children who are still waiting today for food, for Mary's Meals, and to pray for us who are organising this work, that we might really do this work in a way that honours our Blessed Mother and that points to her Son Jesus.